Hi, I'm Seamless, and today is Wednesday, which means it's time for a new viewer track review video. If you would like to have your track included in one of these review videos, all you have to do is head on over to the Discord channel, which is linked in the description of this video, and go to the submissions channel, where there's also a rules channel and also mods around there to help you out for helping you do stuff like making sure your music is named properly, so that there's a artist name and a song name, that kind of thing. And then I randomly pick them up, and then here they go inside of this project here. Like this first guy, Chandelier by Swrdfish. There it is. There. Okay. Oh, we got markers too. I'm digging the marker. Hello. It says hello. Well then, let us see how this goes. Wow, that was awesome. I kicked every piece of ass. Oh my god, this was a really good track. Holy shit. The your labels were fun. The sounds were good. It's very like I like the metallic screech of it all, but on top of it, you managed to get that texture in here in such a way that's not top heavy and burny. That typically is when we sort of see this stuff, right? This is one of these. This is very rare to see a track mixed this well. That's this. because the tendency is to go overboard on a lot of things that create a lot of sort of frequency destruction. That sounds cool, but adds up in a way that kind of is a problem to mix. And there were no problems in this mix. Everything was like accounted for, and the kick especially was just perfect. It has exactly the amount of that like mid-range kind of hip-hop flub that sounds like it's a rumply kind of distorted effect that happens when you do that. But when you just do that to a kick to make it sound like that, you lose all the rest of the aspects to it that make it sound cool. And absolutely nothing was lost in this kick. It's just so good. The sound design, the way the texturizing of it, the mixing of it, and this is just so solid. And I'm harping on like that aspect of it because it managed to make stuff that's like not bleeding edge amazing feel ridiculously cool. And a lot of that had to do with the stereo presence. So if you're unfamiliar with what this doober is, this is a vector scope. And what this shows us is a track's balance left and right, plus and minus. This is polarity too. And so when you see those real big hits that are dead center, straight line, flat line here, that's when it's real mono. And then when it's like a big square, that's when it's stereo. But it's also when it's clipping. That's what the clipping looks like in this particular graph. And yeah, this was clipping like crazy the whole time. And that's, I guess, something that doesn't particularly matter, like, to you and your texture on this. Like, the sort of issues that kind of clipping creates that we discussed at length in many videos are really only problems if they're problems, you know? Not something I think I imagine is true for this texture, because just how well most of the important stuff are taken care of. Like, another thing about it is the balance of impact on versus how loud the content is. The content is present and there, but it does not overshadow the hits on stuff. So that even whatever level you're listening to it on, the balance is still like detectable. And that's how you do smooshing, sausagey stuff right. Okay, done gushing on this track. Good job. Swrdfish, spelled a fun way. It's in the link to the description there. Next up we have Flux by Distortions. Whap! Oh, this got brighter. Okay. Well, this is an individual's named Distortions, so I suppose I don't know what I expected. But here we go. Playing in 3, 2, 1. Neat. Okay. So that was cool. This is a cool track. I dug it a lot. The mix wise, all that stuff we're talking about by the previous track, it's still pretty much true about this track. It's just that the level, the height at which the content is relative to the impact is a bit higher. So it's brighter and louder. That we're looking at visually is loudness and level and frequency spectrum. But you see how it's kind of just like a homogeneously solid level, except for kind of up here. This is that top heavy stuff that I'm normally talking about. And unlike most of those songs, though, there's only really one element in this song that's actually top heavy. The rest of them are pretty good, but it's the main dude, the main like kind of talky bass, like this guy. That guy. This specific area of the spectrum right there, that's kind of burning up there, burns just a little too brightly, and it happens a little too often, and eventually it starts to feel, I can start to feel it dig into me. And the rest of the stuff are burned up just right in a way that kind of compensate for relative to it. You can kind of see that they're not as hard as that guy is in that range, but that guy is in that range a lot, and it's a lot. So I recommend coming down, like either, I don't know, whatever, do this again or next track you're doing, not to push that kind of thing that far. And to be clear, the reason why I work for the rest of the guys is because they weren't as there like the whole time. Like the main other guy, the main like bouncy kind of offset dude, which by the way, the rhythm on the drops on this was great. I love that. Please experiment more with that funness. It was awesome as hell. What I was saying is that the rest of the other guys are okay because they're not the solid wall of regularity in that frequency area as the other guy is. It's there when it's there the whole time at the same level that it always is, whereas the rest of them actually move around and kind of play with it and don't stay there and burn up. That's why. That's the only reason why. So whenever you make any kind of smooth, persistent texture in that frequency range, reduce it relative to the dudes that are more sparse and sparkly. That's my recommendation. Rest of this track was dope. The impact was dope. Definitely clipping all over the place. I am questioning whether or not it's valuable to even bring up clipping, but I feel like it's helpful information. I also feel like some parts of this track were leaning, but I think you might have known that as like an effect, like the kind of because it was only the fill moments. All right, next track up we have Epix Tank Man, Leo. Gonna see when it starts in the time.
dance.
Interesting ending. Sub, fine song, perfectly epic. Lots of mixing to discuss in this guy. Also, this sort of middle guitar section felt super kind of long. Like, the thing was cool. I think maybe like you could have gotten to this part by like faster, like having all of the bits and then make it just kind of run through the whole thing, but a bit faster, despite it's fast. Not like fast as the tempo wise, but you know what I mean. Play the parts faster. Anyway, so let's talk first about kicks and snares. So the kick and the snare. You might have seen in the previous tracks that a lot of the snares that had the punch that you probably were going for with this track look a little bit like the kicks do, only higher frequency. That's because the punch that you have in a kick is like this because of this sort of frequency fall that is happening. But this sort of thing ain't doing it here in your samples that you've chosen for this whatever snare is happening. So it comes across sounding kind of like a almost a toned kind of impact versus like actually having impact. So those are the sorts of samples you want to find, that ones that kind of look and sound like kicks at those frequencies, and then have those up and layer them with the burst that you like on top of that kind of thing. But lots of elements also in this drop while we're here. We're into mixed well, like cohesive well. What I mean by cohesive well is that lots of elements were just very much louder than the other ones. Like the chord stabs and things were very much more present, and then like the cool, like really neat little, this bass patch was cool. That guy, like him a lot. But he's a lot louder than like what goes on. Oh yeah, that's the dude. So there's that sort of like in between saw that happens. It's just very not as competitive presence wise with the stuff that's happening, and also the chords themselves. They're all on very different levels and not related to each other. And you can sort of see sort of what the solution might be looking at the spectrum, is that they could be doing what they're doing frequency wise, but they just don't need to be as bright or louder, or maybe they do need to be brighter or louder in those ranges, and then that'll basically make the match. It's a bit like color grading, but for audio. You want to have it all kind of homogenized a bit, you know, like that previous track. That sort of looks like that. It's up to you, obviously, how hard you want some things to stick out more than others, but for the most part, this just felt very disparate in the drop. And then also the middle bits with the drums, like the kind of squashy drums. I dig that sort of, you know, Matrix Chateau-esque beat. Mr. Rob, good times. Not for that long and not under this much stuff. Like that, there's a long time to go without being real hard. You know what I mean? Like without the actual. A bit on that, on the long in the tooth for some of the reverb. The reverb doesn't need to be that way. I guess it could be that way. It doesn't have to not be that way. Personally, I would say not so much on the reverb, but I also personally like that. I like things being big and epic. Perhaps do a reverb send thing and then maybe high pass it a bit. Perhaps, you know, you could be specific on things like snares and like you want that like woo kind of long tail on the range there. It's so cool to have reverb there, but for the most part, other stuff doesn't need to have reverb that low frequency. And then you can actually have more of it if you focus it mostly on higher frequencies, because then you layer them together without so much more consequence, and you won't have as much of that whippy, over-compressed approach. So yeah, decent job on this track, Leo, Epix Tank Man's. Next up, we have Davey Tones, Space Modulator. We must all modulate our lives. In 3, 2, 1.
I'll see what the little stinker is up to on my super video detecto set.
After 2,000 years of work, the Illudium Q36 explosive space modulator. At long last, my dream come true.
Pardon me, Doc, but could you rent me a U-Drive flying saucer?
Please, sir, do not interrupt my chain of thought. I'm a busy Martian.
I've got to get back to the Earth.
The Earth? Oh, the Earth will be gone in just a few seconds. And where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom. Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. Brace yourself for immediate disintegration.
You shouldn't fool around with firearms, Shorty.
Oh, goody!
Pardon me again, Doc, but just what did you mean by that crack about the Earth being gone?
Oh, I'm going to blow it up. It obstructs my view of Venus. The Rhodium Q-36 explosive space modulator. That creature has stolen the space modulator. Computers. I'm going to blow it up. Very interesting. I do so enjoy observing the flora and fauna of that tiny planet.
Happy birthday, you thing from another world, you.
Oh, thank you. Oh dear, now I suppose I shall have to use force.
Oh no.
I'll see what the little stinker is up to.
Ah, it was cool. You know, my dad would probably like this track. He's a real big like Looney Tunes fan. He's got some cells up on the wall, but there's a couple like he's got that bird guy from the Marvin and Martian cartoon. Anyway, this track kicked ass. This one had like the maximum relationship between impact and content, in the sense that every element of content had the same impact, which was to say a lot of impact. Like, it didn't matter that the main bass over here was as loud as a kick in the drums, because every other element was too. So which meant that when you turned it down because you had to, flee from the fire, the rest of it all still kind of meshed. And like, this is extremely excellent sandwiching of hard stuff. This is like good hard stuff today. I'm digging the batches. And did you see that? Did you see the ring modulation on the voice pop up and what that looked like in the vector scope? That was cool. I'm pretty sure this was it.
Computers.
Nope. Was this it?
Space modulator!
Did you see that? That's ring modulation. And because it's in stereo, that's what it looks like. And like, that's essentially we're seeing the wave in the particles, because of it's a particle looking thing to make it look like what's happening, right?
Space modulator! Space modulator!
It's just so cool. Oh my god. So cool to do that. We get to see that in vector scope format. What else was neat? A lot of stuff. Okay, so I'm confused. Honestly, what is all this noise going on in the background?
Supposed to be an earth-shattering.
Because it's there. Like, you can see it in the low end. And I can see it flitzing the stuff around in here, but I couldn't really hear it.
After 2,000 years of work,
I guess it's whatever background is like to mask the cartoon voicing, I guess. because that's not easy to blend in old recorded audio, like unless you're not trying to blend it, you just kind of junk it in there. But this felt pretty good. This felt pretty like we had nice bright tones mixed well with the thought thrown in vintage recordings. So good job, Davey Tones. Moving on to May with You Love. Here we go. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Dope track was dope. Everything about this is like 90% like perfection. Like this should just be on Monster Cat, except like the mix when all the stuff together is almost perfect. It is just a little just south of perfect, which is keeping me from just being like, this track is perfect. In particular. So you might notice, yes. I look at this when the snare hits, and look at like how like thin the snare sort of line is versus everything else whenever it's around it. I'm bringing attention to that because the high frequency presence of the snare doesn't really cut through the high frequency presence of everything else, but it's also really loud. The high frequency presence of the snare is actually just really, really up there. But that's not why it's not present, though. The reason why it's not present is because it's not as wide as the rest of the stuff, and it doesn't compete with it. So it has to compete with it there, too. Like, a lot of these things have to compete either by pushing it away for the moment more or less harder, or by doing it more itself. The kick I'm fine with. Like, I would have tried something different with how its presence was managed up there, but it's not a problem. The main issue, though, is how the compression is timed. It's just a little too flippy. And the last issue, so like that's if you've ever heard this discussion in previous videos, the sort of solution to the flippiness problem is to increase the speed of your compression timing, so release times and attack times and that kind of thing. And if it's already kind of at a sweet spot where it doesn't really sound better if you do it faster to you, then you have to start making it a time-based, like a temporally changed thing, where it is faster and it hits and slower when it's not hits per hit all the time. And that helps you kind of get the last 10% of crisp that this track needs. So this is like Barely Alive sounding stuff. And I mentioned Barely Alive because A, it sounds like it, but B, it also has an interesting like early Barely Alive arrangement sort of thing they did, which was to have one really cool bass hit and then repeat it a lot. A few of those early tracks were like that. And then they got away from that, and it didn't take very long. Like, they just got really a lot better at that. But this main riff of the main dude, that guy, that is repeated way too many times to be like adjusted by itself like that. It's a fun sound. It's really cool. But it can wear out its welcome, and then by like the 5th or 6th time it comes around, it's not cool anymore. That ends up being how that happens. And when you make a song that complex, not cool, it sort of adds towards a kind of fatigue in listening. Unless you're really into this sort of thing. Like, I didn't care when Barely Alive was new and was doing that because I just wanted more of that sound in my face. So that it happened over and over again was fine because there wasn't just, you know, a whole genre of the stuff yet. But just make it just even a little bit different. Like, cut it up, reverse it, up and down, pitch it, filter it, anything. Just not the same like that every time. Although I will say, the way that you have everything together kind of all at once, you have it's not just full spectrum stuff. You also have like full register of instrumentation present, leads and vocals and pads and the basses and the drums and everything all at once, all at once. And it is really good, even for how far off like the compression timing is sort of stopping us from being like a gem. Like, the reason that that's just only a 10% thing is because of like the fact that you've gotten that far with all this crap going on is already very impressive. This bit though, this got weird. This timing, that was cool, but it needed like especially when it came back again later. I like the concept. I like it a lot. I think you need to switch up and like not just be the same tube the whole way through. Like, just one bar of difference in there. Either that or add a different layer of syncopation. Like, I was actually kind of thinking if you actually kind of straight hatted it, like 16th note hats over this, but only when this was happening, or even just in the second half when this is happening. Something that spices it up other than just having it be that the whole time way through. Because a little bit, it sounds like an effect that got turned on and just sort of forgot about it for that whole section, and that maybe perhaps it wasn't designed to be played that whole section, because it does get a bit worn pretty quick. But it is interesting. I dig that about it. I also dig the music. I dig like everything. All regular track like about this track is pretty much like professional AF. So high grades given. Moving on to Beeb song by JaxMiX. Playing this dude in 3, 2, 1. Okay. So this was a very competent mix. Like, it's not blowing my face apart with incredible loudness and amazing clipping, but it's doing, like, it's structurally relevant to itself, which is to say that it sounds like the genre it is, and it feels has nice presence and crunch and snap and all those buzzwords. And this organy thing was way too loud. This is a problem with these sort of sharp, high frequency sounds that are, like, rather not sharp ones that don't have lots of harmonics in them, like saw waves, whatever, like organ kinds of things that are mostly just octaves of sine waves, is that, like, their presence can be pretty hard without a lot of work. And this guy is just a little too peaky for my taste. But this is otherwise excellent. Very, like, all of the things are where they need to be and are, like, nice and carved out. You can see that there's not a lot of frequencies out of where they are for what they are. Like, so this is like an example of the content being real far away levels, like appearance wise, impact loudness wise to the impact. Like a kick and a snare and impact are quite a bit above the rest of the stuff. And this is kind of a bit like what I was talking about one of his last video, the previous one about Periphery's old stuff, about it being really drum heavy and that making it impossible to hear anything but the drums when you're in an environment where loud things are actually loud, because you turn them down to not be loud and then you can't hear any things that aren't that loud anymore. And this is sort of one of those experiences where if I turn this down to be a comfortable kind of hit with the drums, that the rest of the stuff really isn't that loud. But so this is sort of the point of, like, high dynamic range stuff, though, is that, like, if you do turn it out to be loud enough to hear the rest of the stuff, that kick and snare is going to hit you. But you might not necessarily want that, although you might totally want that. Like, I might be like, oh, I don't want it to hit you, but I'm not, like, the value of the crush dynamic range stuff is the idea that it can be turned down to still sound loud, versus something a little bit more delicate like this. But the genre I'm akin this to is a bit of a synthwavy kind of experience, because that's kind of what this sounds like. It sounds like a kind of more modern and better mixed versions of 80s stuff, but it does still have, like, higher dynamic range than, you know, normal modern things. So cool. Good gerb indeed. JaxMiX. Moving on, we have Waiting by Mewnlight Rose. Ooh, look at that bass. That's a bright bass. Let's hear how we go with this one. And 3, 2, 1. Clever. Another very dopely mixed track with nice attention paid to impact and detail. This particular track was placed in there with a request to ask about how to kind of fill up space in this track. I can kind of see why they asked the question, because this track does a real good job of being present, but not a whole great job of there being stuff behind what's there, right? So we got the main kind of hit, and the hit's great. This kick and the bass into it, like, really, really good. Good on this, like, marimba-y sounding thing, too, right? We were just talking about the problems of, like, kind of clean frequency things, and this is a pretty clean frequency thing. It does a good job of not, like, being too sharp on stuff. Though, you kind of had the right idea when it came to what you did use to kind of fill it up on here, but it's mostly a stereo thing. Compared to other tracks in this video so far, this is a pretty narrow mono thing, and I think that's big, like, stopping you from feeling like your track is as full as it could be. So I would recommend either beefing up what's here with some spreader stuff like reverbs and choruses and delays and stuff, or add some new elements that do a more like flighty background patty job, a la Massive Attack type stuff. In fact, before we got to here, like, I was about basically thinking of this content, but more along the lines of like the kind of 90s choir type stuff. Not unlike Massive Attack's track Teardrop, that was the intro track to House for a while. House MD with Hugh Laurie. That had a lot of that, like, sort of deliberately janky sounding things, but they were basically there to be frequency filler. Like, they were, like, you could just carve off an area and just tap a thing in there, put some reverb and delay on it, and then they call that a, fun sample. That's what this needs. That's what this track needs. It needs that background jank. But it also needs to be background. Like, because this present on top of stuff lead shenanigan you got going on is doing a really good job of doing that. You don't want to jeopardize how good and sharp this is. So whatever new thing you add is going to be, you want it to be like low, kind of like what you got going on here, but you want to spread it. You want to spread it in stereo. So it's low, but wide in stereo. So it's not actually imparting a lot in terms of like level, but that's embiggening what's already kind of here. I hope that made sense. Yeah, so good job, Duo, on the rest of this stuff. Excellent music, and it felt good. The groove was good. The mix was really good. Hits nice. I like the hits. Everyone really, really good job today. These tracks all really like smacked. Tell you what, even like the lowest smacking one, that last track was still pretty smacky, and it smacked. Y'all smacked today. Good job. These tracks smack. Anyway, if you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And as usual, have a nice day.